Peter Navarro used to be the trade advisor to Donald Trump. So obviously he was integral in trying to steal the election in 2020. Wait, what? Was a trade advisor have anything to do with any of this, right? The elections, it's where you're just supposed to be dealing in trade. No, Trump filled his administration with right-wing nut jobs who never actually did any of their jobs. They just went around trying to foment right-wing lunacy. And in the case of Navarro, he apparently conspired with Steve Bannon to do a coup, and he's now bragging about it. But before we get to Navarro and Bannon and their coup, and that is an amazing story. They just admitted it, exactly what their plan was. And apparently it was called the Green Bay Sweep. We're gonna get to that. But I wanna give you a sense of the other side of the Republican Party. So while Trump and his buddies were planning to steal an election, Rand Paul has a different idea what it means to steal an election. Let's go to his tweet. He said, this is of course a Republican senator from Kentucky. How to steal an election. Now listen carefully to this. Seed an area heavy with potential Democratic votes with as many absentee ballots as possible, targeting and convincing potential voters to complete them in a legally valid way, and then harvesting and counting the results. No, my friend, what you just described is democracy. That's exactly what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to get ballots to people who want to vote, then convince them to your side. You even said in the tweet that it's legally valid, and then you collect their votes and you count them. That's called an election. I mean, they're unbelievable. Guys, they're so used to stealing elections ahead of time that, and how do they do that? They say, oh, I'm gonna purge the voter rolls. Oh, look at that, I happen to purge mostly African Americans and Latinos. Golly gee willikers, I don't know how that happened. Hey, I'm gonna have tons of polling areas in Republican districts, but if you're in a Democratic area, like an inner city, a university campus, an urban area, oh, well then I'm gonna have very few polling stations and you're gonna wait online for hours and hours and hours to make sure you don't vote. Now here's Rand Paul, the schmuck, going around going, well, can you believe that? They didn't let us steal the elections ahead of time. Now they're letting people vote. What is this, a democracy? You think I'm exaggerating? No, this has been their plan for over 4 decades. Paul Weyrich, who was the godfather of the conservative movement, set up some of the biggest think tanks, including Heritage Foundation, that you still hear about today. Listen to what Weyrich said about voting.
Now, many of our Christians have what I call the Gugu Syndrome, good government. They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down.
That's amazing. He admitted it in public, and now Rand Paul, this many years later, is going around going, can you believe the Democrats are trying to get people to vote? Stop the voting, stop the voting. Because voting is how you steal elections. No, that's the exact opposite. Voting is how you win elections. Trying to stop people from voting is how you steal elections. And that's what happened with Brian Kemp in Georgia. Now that's the normal Republican playbook, which now brings us back to Bannon and Navarro. So what did they do? Well, they tried the voter purges, they tried all those dirty tricks that they always do, right? And oh, I need voter ID laws. Well, 25% of African Americans don't have a driver's license, mainly because they live in large cities and socioeconomic conditions. Now, it's not like they don't know that. Weyrich knew that. Rand Paul knows that. Every Republican politician that pushes for voter ID laws knows that there's almost no voter fraud in the country. It's like 0.0000001%. That's a fact, actually, from a Republican study. But you're gonna eliminate 25% of African American voters if you do voter ID laws. So that's normally how they steal elections. But Bannon and Navarro had a problem. They didn't do enough of that. Trump lost the election in 2020 anyway. So they had to organize how to steal an election afterwards. Now that's a lot trickier, right? Well, good news for us. Navarro wrote a book on how they did it or how they were planning to do it. And he has a curious culprit here for who foiled their plot. And it was right-wing rioters. Super interesting. All right, so now let's go to Daily Beast explaining it. In his recently published memoir, Peter Navarro, then President Donald Trump's trade advisor, details how he stayed in close contact with Bannon as they put the Green Bay sweep in motion with the help from members of Congress loyal to the cause. The Green Bay sweep. What in the world is that? Well, don't worry, he's going to explain. He said, we spent a lot of time lining up over 100 congressmen, including some senators. It started out perfectly. At 1 p.m., Gosar and Cruz did exactly what was expected of them. Now remember, Cruz had his wife called ugly, and now this pathetic worm of a man is helping to organize a coup after the elections in favor of Donald Trump, who insulted his wife, his dad, etc. And Gosar is in the House. He starts the proceedings. He's so mentally unbalanced. All of his siblings have come out in political ads saying, please do not vote for our brother. He's basically a lunatic. So they're like, Bannon and Navarro go, that's our boys. One's a lunatic and the other's a worm. We'll get them to do anything we want, and they did exactly what was expected of them. So we're gonna explain what it was. He says it was a perfect plan and it all predicated on peace and calm on Capitol Hill. We didn't need any protesters because we had over 100 congressmen committed to it. That is an amazing quote because that tells you two things. One is, he's saying, you schmucks, you didn't need to break into the building. The actual coup was happening inside the building. We already had 100 of our guys ready to throw the election, take the results and throw it in the garbage and destroy democracy. And you idiots broke in and did violence and you interrupted us stealing the election in a more effective way. Now, the second thing that you get out of it is, he says it was the rioters' fault that otherwise we'd have stolen it, right? And that's the part that a lot of the press is focusing on. To me, the Green Bay sweep is way more interesting and almost gets rid of the need for the January 6th commission because the culprits actually just told you what their roadmap for the crime was. It's amazing, right? So, I'll also note, well, who riled up those protesters? Trump did. So Navarro, who just the other day called Trump the smartest man he'd ever met, what a pathetic bootlicker Navarro is, now is basically saying, if that idiot Donald Trump hadn't riled everybody up in the violence, we had this thing stolen. Okay, in fact, he said, as you just saw, it was a perfect plan. So what was the plan? Daily Beast explains, Jose Pagliery writing in, this last minute maneuvering never had any chance of actually decertifying the election results on its own. A point that Navarro quickly acknowledges, but their hope was to run the clock as long as possible to increase public pressure on then Vice President Mike Pence to send the electoral votes back to 6 contested states where Republican-led legislators could try to overturn the results. Now, this is an integral part of how they plan to do the coup. So, Mike Pence has a ceremonial role. He's the vice president and he's just supposed to get the results from the states and certify them. I've used this example before, this analogy before. It's like a guy going out to throw the first pitch in a baseball game. And Trump kept blaming Pence and it made no sense. And I would say, how's the guy throwing out the opening pitch supposed to win the game for you? He's not even in the game, it's ceremonial. But Navarro and Bannon explain here. They know that Mike Pence cannot unilaterally declare Donald Trump president, but he can delay things, and he can say, well, I'm just not counting it. I'm not going to count it. What are you going to do? And the Constitution says I have to count it, and I'm not going to. Instead, I'm going to tell the Republican legislatures in those 6 states, just pretend that Trump won instead of Biden. Now, the delay is part of the strategy, because remember, this is all happening on January 6th. Inauguration Day is January 20th, just 2 weeks later. If they delay long enough, they're going to say part of the plan, apparently, right? Now, this part he doesn't outline as clearly. I'm giving you all of his direct quotes. But if you think about it, for 2 weeks, if you just have Trump as president and they went back to all those states, Arizona, Georgia, etc., and the Republicans are pretending to do recounts, which they already did, the audits, all of that stuff had done, they had no evidence, but they're pretending to do that. They're going to say, well, Trump's in office, we don't know who won, so the current president is just going to stay in office and we're not going to do an inauguration. Boom, that's part of stealing it. But another part is the media, and they know that, so he gets to that. The political and legal beauty of the strategy was this. By law, both the House of Representatives and the Senate must spend up to 2 hours of debate per state on each requested challenge. For the 6 battleground states, that would add up to as much as 24 hours of nationally televised hearings across the 2 chambers of Congress. So they thought, well, by law, we get to dominate media for 24 straight hours. Now, we didn't actually win. We don't have any proof at all, but it doesn't matter. We don't need proof, we just need propaganda. Because if we can convince the Republican legislators that this is an open question, they'll just pretend Trump won instead of Biden, and boom, we steal the election. Green Bay sweep. Now, of course, the Bannons and the Navarros go, oh no, not stealing. We have real evidence, wink. I'm gonna get to that too. Navarro explains himself. The Green Bay sweep was very well thought out. It was designed to get us 24 hours of televised hearings, but we thought that we could bypass the corporate media by getting this stuff televised. Look at how much they care about the media. A giant point of Green Bay sweep was delay, get the media to focus on our propaganda instead of what is true. They've lost all the cases. They lost 60 cases. Even Trump appointed judges were like, you have presented no evidence, none. Get the hell out of my court. And they know that. They know that. That's why they've got to replace facts with propaganda. And if you have 24 hours of televised hearings where Republicans are lying nonstop, that entire time, propaganda wins over facts. So they continue. Navarro says Steve Bannon's role was to figure out how to use this information, what he called receipts, to overturn the election results. That's how Steve had come up with the Green Bay sweep idea. To overturn the results. Now, did they have any receipts? I just told you they had none. Every judge, including the most right-wing judges, every conservative judge said, you have no evidence, none. You're liars, get out of my court. They didn't win any of the cases. Since then, there's been, at the time there was audits, recounts, hand recounts. They won none of them. In fact, most of those wound up giving more votes to Biden than Trump. They had almost no cases of voter fraud at all in the whole country, let alone enough to swing 6 states. They knew they were lying. But they thought, who cares? Let's overturn the election anyway. And meanwhile, on that same day, January 6th, Bannon is running the play on his own show. And Green Bay sweep is a reference to a football play where they rerun the same idea over and over and over. It was Lombardi's idea. You run the sweep play, and it doesn't matter how many times you do it, you just ram it down their throats. And what that is referring to here is the propaganda. You just repeat the propaganda over and over and over until people think that maybe you did win the election. And we don't need everybody to think that. We don't need most people to think that. Most people voted for Biden. He won by 7 million votes. Who cares? All we need is to convince the Republican state legislators to execute the coup for us with no evidence at all. Flat out steal the election. So what does Bannon say on that day on his show? He says, we are right on the cusp of victory. It's quite simple. Play's been called. Mike Pence, run the play. Take the football, take the handoff from the quarterback. You've got your guards in front of you. You've got big, strong people in front of you. Just do your duty. They're telling Pence, steal the goddamn election. Do it, run the play. Now, I gotta give credit to Pence. He didn't run the play, he knew what it was. And he refused to be part of stealing the election. And he deserves historic credit for that, to be fair. Now, last couple of things here. Daily Beast explains, indeed, and this ties back to Trump. Indeed, Trump legal advisor John Eastman had penned a memo, first revealed by journalists Robert Costa and Bob Woodward in their book Peril, outlining how Trump could stage a coup. And Trump clearly referenced the plan during his January 6th speech when he said, quote, I hope Mike is going to do the right thing. I hope so. I hope so. All Vice President Pence has to do is send him back to the states to recertify, and we become president, and you are the happiest people. But there's something Navarro got wrong. The riot didn't happen and foil their plan for a bloodless coup. The riot partly happened because Pence didn't play along. Remember the one thing they were chanting as they broke into the Capitol, which at first confused a lot of people. But when you know what the Green Bay sweep was, it explains everything. They were chanting, hang Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence, because he refused to be part of the coup. He refused to betray America like they wanted him to. He refused to destroy our democracy. That's why they wanted to murder him. That's only after their plan didn't work. And finally, Navarro says about his original plan, I'm telling you, man, it was just so peaceful. And about the proceedings on January 6th and the protests, I saw no anger, none, zero. Well, Peter, we saw the anger with our own eyes as they killed cops and attacked everyone in their way. They broke into the building and they were chanting about executing the man who wouldn't run the play you called, Peter Navarro, the play you called. That's why they were looking to murder him. And now you turn around and go, oh, we were gonna steal the election and destroy America without the violence. God damn it, they ruined it by doing the violence too early. I don't know if you know this, and you probably don't, because it appears by all accounts that you're a moron laying this out in front of everybody. But that is not exculpatory evidence. That actually is damning evidence. And by the way, they could wrap up the January 6th commission now. The guys just admitted exactly how they were planning to do the coup. The question is, are the Democrats going to do anything about it? Are prosecutors going to do anything about it? The riot should be punished because there was actual violations of the law like trespassing, violence, etc. But that's the sideshow. The Green Bay sweep was the actual plan to steal the election. Are you just gonna let that sit? If you don't punish that law breaking against our democracy, that attack, the actual attack on our democracy, well, next time they're gonna say, hey, we planned it. We told them in public that we were gonna do it, and they didn't know anything about it. So that means the next time we lose a presidential election, we just run this play. And that way, we kill democracy, and the schmuck Democrats saw us doing it and didn't do a goddamn thing about it. So it's put up or shut up time for all the people who claim that they care about January 6th. Are you going to actually do something about the coup that was planned and halfway executed in this country, or aren't you? You're gonna turn us into a third, world banana republic here if you don't take action. They just told you the crime. They admitted it. They're rubbing it in your face. Thanks for watching The Young Turks. I really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.